Remco Evenepoel lapping Tadej Pogacar in Kigali evoked Indurain and Armstrong, the sight of the Belgian, already crowned triple world time trial champion, overtaking the Slovenian during the 2025 World Championships in Rwanda, will remain etched in cycling's recent history. This was no ordinary scene. Two of the most talented riders of their generation locked in a direct fight against the clock, and one of them, Pogacar, utterly overpowered. That snapshot travelled the globe within minutes, and with it resurfaced an unforgettable memory for veteran fans: Miguel Indurain in Bergerac, sweeping past a young Lance Armstrong in 1994. The comparison quickly flooded discussions, headlines and social media. Because when a champion achieves something as extraordinary as lapping a rival of such calibre, cycling's collective memory instantly returns to Indurain. The evocation is no accident. The myth of the Spaniard was built largely on those long-time trials where, beyond winning with authority, he lapped established champions. And in Kigali, Evenepoel managed the unthinkable: to recreate in the 21st century the same sensation Indurain inspired 3 decades ago. The Belgian's power, his relentless cadence, and Pogacar's helplessness, relegated to the background in a discipline not his favourite but where he always performs, shaped a narrative that transcends results. It was not just about Remco Evenepoel taking his 3rd rainbow jersey in a row, nor about Pogacar missing the podium. The truly striking moment was the image itself, the precise instant when one of today's great names is swallowed by another who, at least in the time trial, appears to be from another planet. Remco Evenepoel lapping Tadej Pogacar in Kigali evoked Indurain and Armstrong, because fans always look to the past to make sense of the present. Just as Armstrong was overpowered in Bergerac by the giant from Navarre, Pogacar in Kigali endured the sporting humiliation of being caught by his biggest rival. Such images require no words. They are the new symbol of a generational rivalry set to define this decade. To understand why Remco Evenepoel lapping Tadej Pogacar in Kigali evoked Indurain and Armstrong, we must return to the origin of the myth, the famous Marcianada of Luxembourg 1992. That 65-kilometre time trial in the Tour de France was Miguel Indurain's first great masterpiece on a TT bike. The giant from Navarre set off with the yellow jersey at stake and destroyed the field as never before. He didn't just win the stage with crushing authority, he also lapped several international stars, among them Laurent Fignon, who, though in the twilight of his career, was still a living legend. The image of Fignon struggling to hold the wheel while Indurain stormed towards the finish remains, etched in the memory of generations of cycling fans. This was no ordinary victory. It confirmed that Indurain was not just the strongest, but in another dimension entirely. His power allowed him to ride at over 50 kilometers per hour on average for more than an hour, swallowing rivals with an almost superhuman coldness. That day gave birth to the expression Marcianada, an act so out of this world it seemed extraterrestrial. And it wasn't just Fignon. Armand de las Cuevas was also lapped, along with other renowned riders who could do nothing against the Spanish powerhouse. It was the day the myth began to take shape, the day modern cycling discovered the true limits of domination against the clock. From that moment on, every time a favourite laps a rival in a time trial, memories inevitably drift back to Luxembourg. That is why, when Remco Evenepoel overhauled Pogacar in Kigali, veterans couldn't help but make the connection. The same sense of helplessness, the same surreal aura, the same certainty that we were witnessing something beyond the ordinary. The Marcianada of Luxembourg 1992 not only forged Indurain's legend, it set the benchmark. And everything that followed, from Bergerac to Kigali, flows from that source. If Luxembourg 1992 was the first great Marcianada, Bergerac 1994 was the masterpiece that cemented the legend forever. On the 11th of July of that Tour de France, Miguel Indurain lined up for the individual time trial with one goal: to obliterate his rivals, and he achieved it with crushing superiority. But beyond the numbers, what became etched in cycling's memory was the image: Indurain lapping Lance Armstrong like a missile. The American was wearing the rainbow jersey, won months earlier in Oslo, ironically ahead of Indurain himself, who had finished second. That detail added even more symbolism to the scene. Armstrong, already emerging as one of the peloton's most serious prospects, was reduced to a mere spectator of the Spanish powerhouse. The press of the time dubbed his performance the Tyrant of Bergerac, a nod to the literary character and Gérard Depardieu's famous film. And with good reason. Indurain had turned a 64-kilometre time trial into a display of brute force. What struck most was that this was the first time the wider public realised Indurain's myth was not just about winning, but about humiliating renowned rivals. To lap Armstrong while he wore the world champion's jersey was the perfect metaphor of cycling's hierarchy at that moment. Indurain was at the absolute summit. That is why, 3 decades later, when Remco Evenepoel lapped Pogacar in Kigali, the comparison was immediate. Because Indurain lapping Armstrong in Bergerac was not merely a sporting feat, it was an image that defined an era. And in 2025, Evenepoel recreated the same snapshot for modern times. Pogacar is not Armstrong, nor is Evenepoel Indurain, but the symbolic weight is identical. To see a world champion overtaken on the road by another in a world championships is a humiliation that will live on forever. Every time a champion laps another, we evoke Indurain. That is the power of myth. After Luxembourg and Bergerac, no other image of a rider catching and passing a rival in a time trial ever carried the same weight. Yet, whenever it happens, the comparison arises automatically. Such was the case with Remco Evenepoel lapping Tadej Pogacar in Kigali, but also in more recent episodes which, though less remembered, keep that echo alive. Filippo Ganna, seen by many as Indurain's natural heir in the discipline, has also delivered time trials where he lapped prestigious opponents. His exhibitions at national championships, or the 2020 and 2021 Worlds, sparked headlines directly linking him to the Spaniard. It was not the same, of course, because today's context is different. Shorter time trials, carefully managed rivals, fewer chances of such humiliating overtakes. But the memory always lingers. Even Chris Froome, at the height of Team Sky, once lapped Nairo Quintana in the 2016 Vuelta a España. An odd episode, as Quintana went on to win the overall that year. More recently, the 2022 Vuelta produced another striking image. Primož Roglic catching Enric Mas in the final time trial in Santiago de Compostela. Mas had the podium secured, so the overtaking did not change the outcome, yet the scene still went viral, because cycling fans immediately recognised the symbolic weight. Being lapped is a sign of manifest inferiority, a blow to sporting pride. And ever since Indurain turned it into an icon, every overtaking acquires historical dimension. That is why the Kigali snapshot was so powerful. It wasn't just any rider suffering humiliation, but Tadej Pogacar, one of today's greatest. And it wasn't a lesser rival doing the catching, but Remco Evenepoel, triple world champion in the discipline. Every time a champion laps another, we evoke Indurain. And that mythical legacy will live on whenever such a scene arises. The new image for posterity. Evenepoel over Pogacar in Kigali. That is how the 2025 World Championship time trial will be remembered. Because beyond the times, medals and titles, what remains etched in collective memory is the symbolic scene. Pogacar, reigning world road champion, humiliated as he was caught by Remco Evenepoel, triple world time trial champion. A snapshot that transcends generations and is now part of cycling's imagination. The difference with Indurain's era is clear. Today's time trials are shorter, conditions more controlled, and the chance of such a high-profile overtaking is far smaller. Precisely for that reason, what happened in Kigali carries such weight. It was not just confirmation of Evenepoel's absolute dominance against the clock, but also proof that Pogacar is human, vulnerable, capable of suffering a painful defeat on the road. Fans know these images define eras. Such was the case in Luxembourg 1992, in Bergerac 1994, and now in Rwanda 2025. Each with its own context, but all sharing a common theme: a champion devoured by another. That is what makes them eternal. The new image for posterity. Evenepoel over Pogacar in Kigali will be analysed, debated and shared for years. There will be arguments over whether it compares to Indurain lapping Armstrong, or if the symbolism is the same. But what matters is that it has already been inscribed in history. From now on, whenever legendary time trials are discussed, Kigali will appear alongside Luxembourg and Bergerac, because Remco Evenepoel lapping Tadej Pogacar in Kigali evoked Indurain and Armstrong, while at the same time writing its own chapter. A chapter that reminds us cycling is a sport of symbols, of feats that transcend statistics. And in Kigali, what remained was not only Evenepoel's gold, nor Pogacar's fourth place, but the definitive snapshot. The Belgian overtaking the Slovenian in full flight, a metaphor for the present and future of world cycling.